Hey, well, good evening. Welcome to our summer planning meeting. However, we do have an action item, and that is the PHS tennis courts bid.
Yeah, thank you for allowing this to be on the agenda. I spoke to this a little bit earlier, last time we met. And initially, we had a fairly large proposal with Bynum, who kind of does the whole thing, and John decided to go out to bid. That Bynum was a state contract, so it was a guaranteed price. But we felt like with John doing the project managing and some competitive bids, we could reduce that price, and it was reduced almost by $1 million because of the pursuit. And John's gonna be doing that project managing, as I said. So in order to get them going on ordering the material and planning the staging this fall, which will be a little interesting, but I don't think they'll start until towards later in the fall season, October-ish, but this will help us get started on that, so. And it's really exciting, our tennis to be on campus instead of going to Bear Creek Park will be pretty awesome.
Do we have a map by chance?
I don't know if they're a concept design. I think the board's seen the concept design before, but
Yeah, it's been. Well, we can entertain a motion and we can have discussion if that works for everybody.
I move to approve the bid from ZCS to as presented for the PHS high school courts.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
I only saw one bid, so.
it was only one bid. And actually, we had nearly 20 people do the walkthrough, so John was really surprised. And I think, and I've talked to other, like Atory and SV James, the owners of those companies recently. I go, hey, and they're just super busy, which is good. So, and this quick turnaround, we want it in the fall and done by January, so.
Okay.
But
Is it relatively small for them too versus?
Knife River,
Well, no, I mean, you had 20.
yeah, I think it's,
Is
yeah.
it kind of like a small project that was kind of quick and they were like, well?
I think the timing, I think that everybody's, workforce is an issue right now. I mean, they're always talk about workforce, so. Some of their workforce will be going back to college, actually, they were even saying during this time, and so. But yeah, it's probably small, it's not, I mean, some of those people, but there's smaller contractors too that, but people are just busy, so.
I just have sticker shock.
I know, I'm not sure what I was expecting.
Yeah,
what I wasn't
$1
expecting.
million, yeah, tennis court, so remind us, it's 4 courts.
Four
So
courts,
4
fencing,
full
yeah,
size courts, so.
Yeah.
So you could have 4 games going at the same time.
absolutely.
Okay.
Infrastructure for lighting, it doesn't include the lighting, but infrastructure for lighting.
Okay.
And so, and it's gonna be on that south side of that field there, right towards closest to the building, so.
Okay.
Will people be able to play pickleball? I mean, that seems like such a.
Yeah, there are some conversions, so anytime you do that, I don't know if this includes. Necessarily the full pickleball line, I'd have to see on that, but there's definitely some.
That might be. cool,
Yeah.
Simply because, I mean. So many people talk
Yeah.
about pickleball.
Yeah.
I've never played. I wanna learn how to play, but I don't know how to
Yeah.
play. But there seems to be a lot of interest and people go all over. I mean, a lot of people go to, Lithia Park and there's just a lot of other places, but it might be nice to have something that it's so popular that a lot of people love here in our own.
I'll have to see when we did that, when we had a little bit of pushback by neighbors on pickleball, because it is kind of a loud deal, so. I'm not sure if this bid includes that, but it's something that either we can change order or something like that. So,
And just as, at Culver Park in Phoenix, they have lined the basketball court to shared for pickleball, so there are actually courts in city of Phoenix currently. And it's, so as far for district, as far as citywide,
That's good.
the city, so, Dave, when I asked Dave about it, he said, sticking with, OSAA sports was also
yeah,
just to look to be good stewards of.
Okay.
I have learned when you mention pickleball and tennis circles, it's
Wow.
Yeah.
it's-
not regarded very well. I have learned.
So interesting.
Uh-huh.
I just hear a lot of excitement
Yes.
about pickleball.
There is
So,
a lot more pickleball courts than there is,
tennis courts, true
golf
tennis courts.
too. Yeah, they changed all the tennis courts in Ashland to pickleball courts, and now
Wow.
they're building the tennis courts in Talent, they're closed down, but they're putting pickleball courts there. Yeah,
Rogue
tennis players
access.
are very angry about it.
So how are we funding this? And-
This is bond dollars as far as upgraded athletic facilities.
Got it.
Is it not ESSER money? I thought it was gonna be ESSER money.
No,
Did it
not
change?
this.
Oh, no.
And really, our bond obligations are actually all done anyway. This is kind of coming out of the additional incentive and things of that. Remember, we had a $68 million bond, $3 million surplus, $15 million in incentives and grants and things of that nature. So, yeah.
And then what will community access look like at all?
I think, you know, kind of like how we work through the track kind of community access, we'll have to have some. You know, partnerships or agreements like this is sometimes where we could have access to that. That will definitely be a facilities issue and we'll be able to communicate that.
Okay. Won't necessarily be open to the public.
Nope.
No. Okay, got it. Okay.
The public will call and ask and we could maybe do some. Whatever, Wednesday and Friday nights or something, or well, maybe not Friday nights, but
Yeah.
Sunday afternoons, or we have to have staff here too, so.
Right.
Sometime, well, because it will be enclosed.
Um.
So. And enclosed in that gate too. So typically when we do that for the tracks, we say, okay, you have to be out by this time, the custodial staff say, we're closing the facility, so.
Just because I've seen the black gate open for people to utilize the walking track, not the. Curved track, the new track, but
Yeah.
even just the walking path.
We'll have to talk about all those
So
details.
all of those, it'll
Yeah.
come down.
And then, my last question is just, this is pretty typical for a cost of a tennis court this size.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially we went into it when ZCS was going into this design. I think we were looking anywhere from $700,000 to $900,000.
Okay.
So we kind of had that, we sticker shock $2 million, like, oh no, we probably can't do this, and that's why we went. A different direction, and it got to be a space to where, okay, this is palatable, we managed our money well, we can do this is for the good of our community, we're building our tennis programs, another option for our kids. You know, we have 30-some girls tennis players, this will open it up to having a boys tennis program, so. It's really interesting, we didn't have a girls tennis program 5 years ago, and now
Wow.
we have 25 or 30 girls
Amazing.
every year.
Well, you're being talent. There's kids interested, we will build it, that's what we do. Well, I'm for one, aside from like $1 million for tennis courts, it's an interesting, but, I appreciate, John and, you know, getting the bid back and finding ways that we can cut the bill in half that's significant, and what a blessing for us to have that resource internally to be able to manage it. So, yeah, I'm in favor. Any other discussion? Okay, should we vote?
Who seconded the motion?
I did, Sarah.
Sorry, I didn't do the thing. Again. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, Nancy,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I vote yes. Approved. So now we have a number of topics that we're gonna talk about. The first is the agenda structure. I think perhaps in the interest of time and efficiency, maybe we could start with where do we want to start with this? What do we feel like needs attention on the agenda?
I think it would be nice to have accentuated positive. I know we've talked about this a couple times, but have accentuated positive in a different area.
Okay,
So that, or not accentuated positive, sorry, the student
Student
revenue.
Yeah.
oh,
Yes,
okay,
not sure where, I don't
okay,
have an idea of that, but
what
just like,
what prompts that?
um.
Maybe that'll help kind of guide.
We had discussed it before, just because they don't get to be a part of a lot of the discussion,
Hmm,
but they usually get sent out before then.
mhm, hmm.
So, go ahead.
I remember, oh no, go ahead, I remember talking about the actual subject matter that they're presenting, but I don't remember talking about that.
So I
When
think,
it happens.
what I remembered hearing was sometimes coming right after the accentuate the positive,
Yeah.
if there were things that they felt like they wanted to present
Hmm,
from their perspective that were opportunities for change or growth, that the timing of coming after accentuate the positive was
hmm,
awkward, I think even for adults, but then also specifically too for high schoolers, maybe, I don't know, that's not fair to assume that. My and I think Rebecca alluded to it, is that I think a lot of times the information and discussion component where we would like to have admin in the room to get their feedback on policies and how that really looks like, and we'd like to get some feedback from them on that. We'd like to get some input from the student representatives on their perspective. And because it happens after the recess,
hmm,
where in an interest of time, I understand, but what I would really love to see as far as this is moving the information discussion component to where the action items are. And then if there's an opportunity for a recess, have a recess and move the action items, because we already discussed those the previous meeting. And we're just doing quick, well, maybe we're still having discussion, but those tend to move faster and provide the opportunity at the top for the information discussion, which may then open opportunities up for the student representatives to bring their perspective in. And I know there's been times where we've wanted admin input and they're not here on the information discussion. So that for me is the largest component of shuffling the agenda that I would like to see.
Sarah, I'm not sure how you want it changed. Can you?
So instead of the action items being G,
Mhm.
have information and have the information and discussion be. And then move the action items to after a recess or after the information discussion component. So we would have our facility and bond update prior to our action items, our equity, diversity, inclusion update. Utilizing this agenda as an example.
Yeah.
Reviewing the employee handbook and stuff, all of those would be instead of at I, they would be at G after the consent agenda, so we have the opportunity to have a full room of people, and then if there's time for a recess, great, and then move the action items to either after a recess when student representatives have been dismissed for the if they'd like to, of course, they're invited to stay, but a lot of times they have homework or other things. And similar to admin, not that they Anyway, so I would just like to see those flipped. I would like to see what's happening in I happen where G is, and what's happening in G happen where I is in this format.
I don't necessarily disagree, I just feel like the same reasons you have flipping them could sometimes be applied to the action items.
Well, but the action items were things that we discussed at the previous meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
So we would have already had a really nice, robust conversation around them. And then now they're up for action. This is typically the second time that we've talked
Mhm.
or seen these. And although we do suspend the rules and move things, they would then have the opportunity to potentially be there while we then added it to a consent agenda at the end. So I just think we're missing voice that we want to hear in making these decisions. And I'd really like to include the opportunity for it. Earlier in the evening. I guess the opportunity really is there.
Matt, what are your thoughts?
I could go either way. I mean, I think sometimes not only to give feedback, but sometimes it's nice for all of the people in the room to hear an EDI update, to hear a facility update, to hear, all these types of things. So,
Mhm.
it kind of goes both ways in that regard too. If we're gonna move that up, I think, being able to see feedback or information and also
Mhm.
really sharing things updates that it's good for everybody to hear. I mean, one note, we could move the superintendent report to the very end as well, to have that kind of wrap the meeting, after action items too, so to take care of some of that beginning of the, not that superintendent report takes a whole lot, but it could kind of wrap it up, yeah, at the end.
Sometimes you tee off things that we're going to talk about as
Yeah.
well, so
Either way, it
again,
could stay there,
either way,
yeah.
I do appreciate that you're prepping us for, what's coming as part of what's happening. The districts.
Sorry. I'm
Go
talking
ahead.
so much.
Yeah, good. Well, I think because a lot of this discussion involves staff participation, that's why I really wanted your input, especially.
I think also, if we move student rep up before accentuate the positive, it's like, it shows that we value what we're starting every meeting off with
Things first.
hearing from
I
our
like
students,
that.
so.
I really like that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And we can certainly try it now that we'll have student reps and. Well, depending on how the student rep conversation goes later down the road, we won't have them by August 15th probably, but. We can certainly try a new format and see how that goes on the first meeting of the. Moving information discussion and.
Michael, do you have hesitations? What are you,
I don't have hesitation, but I'm just processing. Yeah, I'm just thinking through. I know it's happened. But I can't think of a specific example where, I know there's been examples. Where I'm like, oh, I wish so and so was here so I could ask a question, but I can't think of a specific example.
Just looking at this employee handbook,
Right.
when all the admins are gone, you can't
Yeah.
ask a question about the
Yeah,
employee.
That, I thought about that too, that would be one where, and so my first thought was, well, we just have to stay.
Well, and when
For
some
that.
of these policies are gonna be affecting them at their jobs.
Right.
Like, I
Right,
would like their feedback on it. I mean, we get like a little bit, they'll be like, yeah, that
Yeah.
improves or whatever, but.
Is it possible to break the information and discussion, like for the board policies that are going to be coming up? To break that up?
so are you
Like
talking about
episodes.
like numbers 9 and 10? Give me numbers so that I'm
Right.
understanding. what
Yeah.
Mm,
9 through 15,
So you would have those at the top versus, you
No.
would put them where?
have those. I'm asking
No, I'm trying to clarify and
Um,
understand what you're saying.
if you could break up information and discussion, so have the typical discussions that we typically have, so from 1 to 8. And then have a recess, then we go to action items, and then we discuss board policies 9 through 15, for example.
And so I would still say that I would like to hear their input on the policies.
Got it.
And so the action really is us voting after we've gotten a lot of
Discussion,
information
okay.
and discussion, and that's, for me personally, that's valuable. Because I may think I know what I'm going to vote or understand, but I appreciate the discussion that happens around the table. And I've learned and changed maybe how I voted based on that, and so I'd like more voice. Especially those that are implementing those policies or impacted by them, so, that. I think it's, John is typically the one that stays after the break, I mean, I'd like
Right.
for it to really seem like all staff is, all staff. Voice is valuable and important, and we want them all to stay, and I'd like for the student voice as well, and I love the visual of putting that on this, at the top. Or, at some point in here, my only concern with putting it at the top is, if having never done it before, it might be a little intimidating to be at the top of the meeting without having any sort of expectation or knowledge of what to say. Because I would really like to encourage more than a activities type of positive report. I'd really like to,
It might be nice for us to create a template, like, what gets shared, or what, what are some possible ideas, and not that it has to be line item by line item, but possible things for the students to share.
well, and I think you shared as well, that talking about maybe when we get to the student representative component, having a board member potentially mentor the student representatives, which then could tie into having some of those conversations or starting to create a deeper understanding of how we'd like to hear from them.
I also think for the most part, I'm like, I mean, I think our ad team will definitely share kind of their thoughts, but some, like, these have been, especially our district office team has vetted, if it's something that's impacting day-to-day operations in the building, I think they'll say, hey, this is coming up, or this is how, how do you see this happening in
Right.
within your school, if there's optional language and things of that nature, so, when it gets to the board, essentially, it's as presented with those, but confirming those questions, confirming that, I mean. Yeah, absolutely, so I know we've asked admin before.
I think there's been attendance policies even in years past where a
Yeah.
similar thing. What does this look like for you? And then coming to here on the back end, this was a really tough policy to implement, or these were some different challenges that we saw. And so having that information for OSBA or for LPC or for all of us to be advocating when policy comes through is to have that information to be able to share, so.
There's nothing related to Robert's rules that, because I think this agenda is more than loosely based on Robert's rules. Robert's rules talks a lot about old business and then new business and things like that. But I can't think of a reason why it would matter for Robert's rules when you do the order of action, right? I mean, am I missing anything there?
I don't think so. People do.
Yeah. So,
I have two things on the agenda that are different. I'll just do one at a time. One is citizens' comments. I have talked to other people and they do their citizens' comments at the end of the meeting. Because sometimes the citizens are coming to talk about something and then they can have the knowledge. I mean, sometimes we've seen it where they're talking about something and then they leave and then the item that they were concerned about, we're talking about in like 20 minutes. And so I've talked to a few board members that are on OSBA and they said that they appreciate and I said, well, doesn't that cause any issues? And they said, no, it actually helps them understand what this, that the school board actually is, are carrying and discussing and all this stuff. Because if you have it at the beginning, we've all seen, and that's kind of one of my things, is like, please stay for a minute, because they speak and then they leave. And first of all, sometimes we have to call a break if it's a big group, which is fine, but, or it's noisy when a big group is leaving. The only concern is if it's students that are younger that wanna talk, then it gets kind of late. So I was just wondering about the citizens' comments, if we're happy there, or, you know, it doesn't have to be there. There's pros and cons.
Absolutely.
I'm happy moving it to the bottom.
I'm happy moving it to the bottom.
I think if we have a situation where we do have young kids, I mean, we move things up before
Right.
too, so it's not gonna be every meeting by any means, so we could play with it.
Well, typically when we've had youth comment, although not always, it's been part of a program
Yeah.
report, which is typically closer to
Yeah.
the top of the meeting, although, when representatives from ODP came, they're definitely
Yeah.
were, but I would say for the most part, that has been when I've seen the most student citizen comment,
True.
participation.
Okay, so what we've discussed so far is moving the student rep report to, yeah, go ahead.
Dawn had two, she only.
But
Oh,
if I
oh,
can continue
Oh,
on. if you-
sorry,
It's okay.
yeah, I
I-
just wanna make sure I got
But
everything.
go ahead, you do that, and then I'll do my last one.
Swapping information and discussion and action items, moving student rep report to before accentuate the positive, so that would be pretty much the first agenda item.
Mhm.
And then possibly moving citizens' comments. Did I miss anything? Okay, go ahead, Don, sorry.
My last one is, I don't like accentuate the positive. And I know our boards talked about this, not this board particular, but other boards. My reason is different than what some of my past board members are. Some of my past ones felt like it took a lot of time, but for me, I feel like. I think it's important to talk about those employees that have been going above and beyond, but I also think that it's. And Sarah and I have talked about it, it's not helpful. Like great, we're doing all these great things, but like, what are you struggling with? What can we change? What policies are causing you issues? What things are you trying to think of outside the box? I mean, I'd like to have more robust conversations and just of like, this is all the positive things. I think it's great. And I think we need to have a balance. I would like to see a balance. I don't know how to do that or what to call it. But I do sometimes feel like, and sometimes it's the same employees every single month, and I feel like that. I haven't heard, I mean, I've heard tidbits, but it's like the same people get mentioned, and you know, I've even said, oh, you were mentioned in the meeting. I was, so and so wasn't this time. So I'm also worried about I don't know what you call it, just morale, like I want everyone to feel like, I don't know, I just want it to be, I don't want anyone to feel not welcome, but sometimes it's like the same people being thanked, and I think it's just because they're like office staff and they're what comes to mind, but I don't know, I want everyone to feel like they're part of a team, but I also wanna hear your challenges, because like in our cases, in all of our cases, we're all really active in the community and we're really active in our government. And sometimes I'm out somewhere and someone will say something and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, that's a challenge. Maybe you could help with that or something. And so, but if we don't know what they are, we can't even think outside the box to help. And I don't know.
No, we've had conversations about this previously about accentuate the positive, and there have been situations where we're in a pandemic, we're in struggling times, or we're in an attendance policy has come down. And I remember being surprised that admin were struggling with the attendance policy because it never came up. It wasn't something that we even knew to help advocate for, to have a voice about. So I'd like it to be. I'd like it to be a little bit more transparent, and real. That sounds horrible. Thanks, everyone.
Just
Call it school topics. What are you Like,
I mean, yeah,
Well, I think,
I
so
need to open the box, but I did.
I always try to stay. In this particular conversation, I'm trying to stay centered in what is our role. And I agree about accentuate the positive and that I think I'd like to see that time be utilized for a little more showing and a little less telling. So in other words, I'd like to see time dedicated for recognizing our students and staff for good things that are going on. I think our admin has done a tremendous job of, you know, of bringing things to share before the board, but I also think it is worth having another look at why we do what we do and what is in the best interest of how we utilize our time. I think, I guess my question is, so are you suggesting we replace accentuate the positive with an agenda item that says share your struggles?
no,
I guess that's what.
I guess maybe I'll just pick on attendance, right? We have these markers that are in our strategic plan that we're following. So maybe something from the strategic plan and how they've seen growth in that specific thing in, and around those, so that we're wrapping around and recognizing that we're paying attention to this. We would like to see, this is a goal, this is, we're spending time changing evaluation tools, looking at strategic plans, tracking goals quarterly. We're doing all of these things, and so like, let's maybe hear periodically one of the things from those strategic plan or our thing at the school level, like, hey, so attendance, or
An update from each school, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be an either or, because I'm hearing
Right.
this sort of either or
I
conversation.
like that, school
And I
of,
don't think
or,
it's necessarily an either or situation.
Right.
It's we want to hear the wonderful things that are happening and celebrate with people. And also, if there is an opportunity to hear about something that we might be supportive of, because it's a question that we continuously ask. How can we support this? And we don't very often hear how we can. So maybe it's just, I'm just thinking of like a framework. How do we frame a conversation to hear positive or to hear an update, the things that are going on in each particular school. But I do hear what you're saying, Michael, like does this become a workshop session where something comes up and it's kind of hard to figure out whose is it to figure it out, right? Is it the leadership in each individual school? Is it Brent? Is it us? So that might be, I can see where that gets a little bit sticky. But I think having an update, hearing, where are we with attendance? Where are we in our strategic plan? Where are we to get more of a real-time update of where we are in reality, not just, we had a really wonderful assembly. Not that those things are not
Right.
great, they're wonderful to hear about. And how can we hear about the other things?
Well, for me, like, personally, this is my personal thing, I'm in a room with a whole, like, big conversations. And sometimes I don't know the answer because no one talks about it, we only talk, I can tell you how great the things are that we do, but I can't tell you very much what they're struggling. So when I'm at LPC or OSBA or in a workshop, NSBA or wherever, and they say, how many people are struggling with attendance?
Or like,
Or, I don't know, or, are you struggling with this new policy change? I don't know. So I'm not wanting to hear a whole bunch of negatives. I just want to hear like the realities. And I get that it's kind of like a fine line because you don't want to put out your dirty laundry but I also want it to be helpful, an update that's helpful and does, because we're here to help the kids. So what information and I don't know the answer, what information can an admin let us know as boards that can let us help our students? I don't know the answer to that question, but that's my question.
I mean, I'm hearing a couple things. I know you're probably eager to jump in here. I'm hearing a hunger for more frequent updates on our strategic plan and the measurables therein. Because I feel that too. So I know we're talking about accentuate the positive, but I feel like this is a little bit of a bigger conversation about how we spend our time on the agenda. And then I just think about who. My opinion is that it's Brent's job to understand these things. How a policy that we've passed is working. And then he needs to be able to have that pulse of what's going on with his team and bring that to us. And so what really comes up for me, hearing what you guys are saying is, this is perhaps a great reason why we changed our superintendent evaluation process and we have those quarterly check-ins built in, because that seems like that would be the, I just don't know that it would be appropriate for admin to go straight to the board with a concern they have with a policy or something else. It's really Brent's role to lead that group and to be that intermediary.
That's why I think maybe an update is better, right? Not
Right.
necessarily that we're talking about, there's this big issue that needs to be remedied and we're like in there as well. I
Yeah,
don't see it that way necessarily.
Yeah.
But I do see how do we become informed about other things, for example, that Sarah's has been losing attendance, right? It's not anyone's like, it's not pointing fingers, it's not like, hey, Brent, you haven't done this. Or we want you to do things this way, but it's more, might be like bigger issues, global issues that impact our district. That we might be able to really be informed and also be supportive in as well.
yeah,
And then advocate for too, as legislation
Right,
is coming through, is we're understanding how this is impacting and not. And I think potentially moving the information discussion, some of this will probably naturally already start happening. And I think we have said at JAB meetings, how can we support you? What can we
Yeah.
do? And recognizing our role in what we should be doing. And so, to that end.
there's so many mandates, right, that come down or policies that we have to fulfill and then they're unfunded. Like, it's one of those
Right.
things that I'm thinking about, like, how can we be more thoughtful about the overall structure of our district? Without necessarily being hands-on, we're gonna be informed of every little thing that, you know, it's not ours to hold, but might be.
And I'm just, and thank you for this conversation, I'm just thinking about our team and, I mean, we're unique, we have every administrator and every board meeting, not, that does not
That is
happen.
unique.
And really in any other districts that I know of or have been a part of, so, I think like we need to be really clear on what we're asking our admin who are just spending hours and hours and hours. And if it's updates or different things, they can come and share, accentuate the positive pretty easily. They do have data and things they're struggling with and I think that would have to be really clear on that format and structure and things of that nature. But I just want to be cognizant of what we'd be asking them to do and share on top of what they're doing, yeah. And being in that space.
Well, like for me, it's for example, like, let's say the power and talent went off 8 times, right? Like, or whatever the case may be, that is something that we can maybe put at, you know, that's something that's going up through, I know the mayor of the talent, that's something that would be legislative to me. So that's something when you're in a building with somebody, be like, you know, we're having power issues, well, funding comes up, we need money, because there's talk about building more monies for building, so that would be a conversation of like, hey, the power and talent went out 5 times, that's causing classroom interruptions, so funding for building infrastructure would be, so those kinds of things, I'm not talking about like the nitpicky type things, but like. The bigger picture type, and I don't know how to explain it, like that, or maybe fuel costs, or, you know, what is. You know, we had to do less field trips because we didn't have enough bus drivers, or something, that kind of information. But I don't know how to put that in words. But that's my own personal, I'm not asking for like, you know, every challenge they have the day, but like the big picture stuff that. We're gonna have. I don't know, maybe I'm asking too
I
much.
do think accentuate positive is kind of like. You only can talk about positive things, seems a little. Not, just not a great way of communicating. Like to talk about all the good things, which is great, but like. I'm sure there's things that they're struggling with that we could help with policy wise or legislation wise or.
Yeah, I agree, and
An
I,
agenda item, like just keeping it real, I mean, this is
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
it is,
Yeah.
It can be positive, yeah.
So like what the other said, yes, and,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, the positive is great, but sometimes, you know, the first person up says all this stuff, you know, we had the, and then it's like. Then that poor person's like, okay, I'm only supposed to speak at this positive and that, you know, so it's also, I feel like it puts pressure, so maybe some feedback on the admin team about it. What they would like as well and come back, but
That's what I was gonna say, data and survey and feedback, so.
yeah, because sometimes I feel like, you know, they don't wanna be the broken record, but. We had back to school, I mean, everybody has back to school,
Like,
like,
obviously, we don't want them coming in and being like, this is bad and this is bad.
right.
But you know, like, it's like too positive and a negative or something like that.
It doesn't even have to be negative, it can just be.
Just, yeah.
Two truths and a lie.
yeah.
If we get to guess which one.
We're starting with thorns and roses today. What's your thorn? What's your rose?
I think this is really good discussion and really interesting. I think the one, I would just challenge us to stay grounded in what our role is. And when we receive information, the next question is, what do we do with it, right? And whose job is it to do something with that information? And how are we collaborating with our chief executive to solve the problems that he should have, and I believe that he does have a very good pulse on what our admin and our staff and our students need from us in order to be successful. And so for me, I think this is probably a bigger conversation about how do we spend our time? What's the best way for us to spend our time? And what I'm hearing and what I felt for a while is that we have this strategic plan. And I feel like it shows up in our agenda in fits and starts, but it's kind of sporadic, and I would like to see us really lean into those measurable things from within our strategic plan. How do those show up on our agenda in a way that's appropriate? You know, we're not gonna ask to see reading scores every 2 weeks,
Right.
you know, but we might wanna see how our kids are doing with reading every quarter, you know.
It's like at the beginning of the year and.
Right, yeah, I'm just,
For example, Javier comes back next week, I mean, we, and I. Have a set time to meet with them, our next meeting, like our August meeting. Typically, it would be nice to do it in this kind of planning session, to have a strategic plan update, but I think it makes more sense, because he's on contract. It's first meeting in August, so, and so that might be where it fits on even the annual agenda item. I think it's too early, last meeting of June, to have that data, so
Yeah.
August makes more sense. And then, you know, when we do these quarterly meetings and evaluations of superintendent check-ins, then that can kick off a quarterly kind of update and assessment, so.
it really kind of goes back to that, yeah. What do you all think about the recognition piece at the beginning of the meeting, where you know, there's some, like, we have a period of time where you recognize students or staff or, you know.
I'm curious if we might. More work, continuously more work, but structure something where people get recognition even within their schools. right? Because sometimes, principals come and will share, shout out to so-and-so, they did great. But then that person has no idea that that is what happened. But I'm curious if we might be able to design something where people get acknowledged within their school systems and even like across the district. So, I don't know, like we have a bias incident report, which that's a whole other conversation, but like a report of sharing with people, like something, and anybody can do it, right? Like if you and I are instructional assistants, and we've just seen kids doing amazing at the playground, like we can vote for someone, or we can acknowledge, not vote, acknowledge somebody else, right? So you create more of this culture of people seeing each other within their environments, within their own schools, and then it gets highlighted here.
It might be more of a publicity thing, but Joe's done that even with families, like Family of the Month and, things of that nature where people can do that with staff again, but that might just be something that we need to highlight a little bit
Yeah.
more. So.
And speaking of that, can we do the, I know there's like walking with the principal, can we have subtitle? I hate subtitles because for a lot of different reasons. But I think for accessibility, I think it'd be really important to have those in English and Spanish. And let me take what I just said back. I don't hate subtitles. I actually think they're important. Like if you're speaking English as that's the language that you speak, to have subtitles, just there's a lot of individuals who are hard of hearing, who it's hard to listen to, and subtitles are great for that reason. But I would really want us to ensure that everybody has access to hearing those messages, not just the English speaking families.
Can you? I agree with you, but I'm wanting to know is it the board meetings or is it at school? I mean, where do you want subtitles? I just wanna clarify.
Oh, you know how Joe does like. walking with the
suit.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, on like the
talks to
Facebook,
different- yeah.
okay.
Which I love them, I think that they're great, and we leave a particular population out when we just do it in English.
He just shared a tool with me today that actually has me speaking in Spanish
Oh,
based on, it's,
look at
yeah, and it's.
Like audibly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I saw this in December with a guy that was speaking Italian, he was going to speak to a group over in
nice.
Italy, and so we had Breezy to look at it, it sounds really good, it sounds kind of robotic though, but it's just, we're gonna look at it, maybe we'll send the Luke with the soup to you.
It'll be,
Please,
there'll be a group of people who come and see you in
Yeah.
person and I don't recognize that.
It would be like, I mean, there's so many, it's really fascinating. United States TV or shows, they get aired all over the place, right? And they're always
Yeah.
dubbed.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little bit trippy
Yeah.
because mouth moves differently than what you're hearing. But it's better because at least people know where people are invited in to hear.
As long as the wording is right, I know we had some at one time and it was like, it's not even close, and so as long as the wording is very similar or close to, or there's only a few hiccups. But if it's,
Translation always cracks me up because it's context.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
a lot of things. But I think that I appreciate that there are more tools for people to use.
and I appreciate that you're having someone else check to make sure the tool is good, because
Yeah.
the last thing we wanna do is offend somebody by.
So,
I'll tell you a story about a terrible translation at another time.
Making me bad.
just thinking about next steps for this, I feel like. Just to share with you all where my head's kind of at, I feel like. Swapping information and discussion and action items is super easy. I think we could do that at the next meeting or at the, the first, I feel like moving student reps to the top is. Easy, and we can be sensitive to the timing of that, depending on the comfort. It sounds like we're gonna have some repeat. Applicants for that role, so it may not be necessary to be sensitive to it, but we can be sensitive to that. Moving citizens' comments to the end, I honestly feel like I need to think about that a little bit more. Maybe we can. we can capture that and sort of where I'm at, I'd like to discuss that a little bit further and.
I
Yeah,
feel like citizens comment should be after information and discussion.
Yeah, see, I think we need some time to chew on that one a
Yeah.
little bit. But I think it's a good idea. I like the idea of rethinking. You know,
Where it's at.
yeah, I think I would like Brent to go back to his team. And talk about accentuate the positive and. Maybe Brent, think about some ways. This idea of recognition, how could we have some kind of way that the board can recognize people, you know, when it's appropriate, and also that it's not just the same people being recognized all the time, and is there a cool way where there can be engagement and involvement in stakeholders in that? So I feel like maybe that's an item where he could go back and discuss that with his team a little bit more, and then as far as how we have more regular updates on strategic plan measurables, I think that's gonna happen through some of the discussion and the evaluation stuff, but also we can also put not a pin in it, but put that in our minds, especially with our next meeting where we're gonna get a strategic plan update. I think we could revisit that also about how we do a better job of having that show up in the agenda in a more consistent way, or where it lives. How is that sitting with all of you?
I mean, do you even want to change the name of it? Accentuate the Positive has been here for 2 years.
I don't.
And based on, you know, some kind of tumultuous times where that, I mean, do we just do school updates?
I like school
Yeah.
updates.
Okay,
But,
I mean, I don't know.
if an admin has a great idea, I'm open to that too.
yeah, I was gonna argue to look at it for different reasons, but just in that, I would rather spend the time bringing someone in to recognize, you know, if, as a district-wide thing. And have that, and that's kind of what I mean by show me, don't tell me type of thing. It's like, here's an example of someone who's doing, a student who's just did this amazing thing in our district. And we want to recognize you as a board, and, you know, you get this certificate or award or something, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where my mind went with it, but, I don't know, do we still want to get an update from each admin at every board meeting? I think that's another question we have to ask ourselves.
Is there, I don't have the answer to that question, but my question is for Brent. How is the team instructed to bring information to accentuate the positive?
They're not instructed at all. If it's a long meeting, we'll say, hey, we've got a long meeting. And so
New admins
Yeah,
that have come
yeah.
and you say, okay, so.
I
you're
just met
required
with
to have
Casey, I just met with Casey on it, they go like, yeah.
To the board meeting,
Yeah.
and they're required, how do you instruct them to do that, or does this
Just-
just define it, and as professionals,
yeah,
they know what to
and
do?
we'll talk about it, and they just, you know, pick 2 or 3 positives out, and
Mhm.
this is, yeah,
That's, okay,
that's about it.
Okay.
There's no format, there's no, usually it's not even spoken of. I mean, we've had admin here for a long time, and the only thing is, you know, we have a long agenda, so, you know,
keep it short. and
Yeah.
sweet.
Oh, go ahead, Denise.
I was just gonna suggest under school, if we called it school update or something. Maybe not have the expectation that everyone's gonna give an update, just maybe. Those that have something, I don't know, just don't.
Well, I like hearing from each school, but, you know, I don't know.
I think with the elementary schools, it makes it a little tough because they're all doing
Right.
around the same thing, and they go one right after the other, so then they're like, well, you know.
yeah,
Deuces, whatever.
especially now, they're way
Yeah.
more alike than they are different.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
as much as they've now really integrated,
yeah,
collaborated, curriculum, timing, and really working together that way, as far as even sharing at the JAB meeting, they now do
join.
Yeah.
a joint, because Well, yes, they all have their each own individual flavor, but they really are, their schedules. Are very different. I'm not, some people's love language is words of affirmation, but not everyone feels valued when that's the way that you show your appreciation. So while I think that that's great and love to hear those things, I wonder sometimes if those are better done with the collective group that you know
Right.
versus, you know,
Sure.
versus this group of people
Mhm.
to, and of course, yes, I love recognizing and seeing the students. And so I was thinking if maybe, so the high school I know has student of the month type of things, right, based on different traits. And so if that's something that maybe we recognize the students of the month based on the traits in that way, that gives an opportunity for recognition to really highlight some different things, and maybe there's an opportunity to hear that way.
Yeah, and
I
it
don't,
can be,
you know,
yeah, and it can be topical and timely, like, for instance, I know other districts. You know, if a team
Mhm.
goes to state and does well or something, or a band, you know, a group. Goes to state and places in a competition, then you can invite them in and they get recognized before the board, and you know, it's just kind of a nice ceremonial thing, but my suggestion would be. Maybe can we have you chew on that, but and talk to admin and maybe. You know, chew on it for the next 3 weeks and we can talk more about it on the 15th about. What we wanna call it, you know, I think.
what does it look
What is it?
like?
Yeah, I just feel like a couple of these things, I really need time to kind of think about it for a little bit.
Can I add one more thing to your brain? to
Yeah.
talk about?
Yeah,
So
got
back
notes.
in the day, like, I think before most of you were on the board, we used to have a program report from students every single month. We had the robotics club came in
Oh,
one
wow.
time, we had DECA come in, we
Mhm.
had band come in and play, we had, I mean, I can't I mean, it was, it might have been
No, we have program reports at least once a month.
at least once a
Maybe it
month.
wasn't every, yeah.
It wasn't every meeting, but at least once a month, and it was different students, I think we had SDI, we had like, I mean, we would have students come in. And they would talk about like what they were doing, sometimes like DECA, I think it was DECA, it could have been speech and debate. They actually put on a speech and debate about summer school. And they had people pro and people con, and they did like this 15-minute demonstration of kind of how it would do, but it was based on like summer school. It was amazing. And we don't do that anymore. Now, I know that's a lot of work. And I know that's a lot of timing, but I think that's something that really gave us, and like, you know, we just won state and we're gonna show you which robots we took to state, and that was like the robotic one, and those kinds of things, you know, some of the kids club had like, they would come in and show us what they did and what awards they did, or talk about their whatever, and it was more of a report, but also like celebrating what they have been doing and the awards and accolades they have gotten as well. I think on it, it's just something I wanted to mention that I really enjoyed in the past.
Yeah, well, I think it fits with this whole idea of recognition. And how do we want that to show up in board meetings? So kind of related to accentuate the positive, I feel like, so, yeah. It's good. So, are we good with that plan? So swap those
That was
two.
a long conversation.
It was, yeah, but it's okay, it's good, I think it's important, particularly, how is the work that we're expecting and, you know, moving the district forward and making sure our kids are having their needs met. How is that showing up in our meeting is really
Yeah.
important, it's the only official touch point we have, yeah, I think it's really, really good. Okay, relatedly, next item is board and superintendent evaluation planning. I think a great place, this really helped me getting, do you all have the email from Kristen?
It's in our notes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. This helped me because it kind of helped frame what I think we need to talk about today. So the good news is the board self-eval often done in the spring.
I thought.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Okay, so once you once you have established when you want that done, we back map to when it needs to be sent out to everyone. So I think, so really that's good. And I think that's an appropriate time frame.
Me too.
Yeah, and then the superintendent eval. Brent's we have the criteria. He already made goals based on that criteria. And so really then it's just about, the cycle that she recommends, the March, being on the similar cycle for admin of March 15th. And then, so she recommends it takes place in February. So then it's just about figuring out the quarterly check-ins and what that looks like. And then, she said I would recommend goals be established over the summer. I don't know that we really need to reinvent the wheel on that. I mean, we have criteria that, Brent's already been working with. We have our strategic plan. I don't know what else we would, and I think, I've heard some board members express, well, I really liked. I think a lot of what we did in the past shows up in this, just in a more detailed way. So anyway, just to kind of frame the discussion, I think the biggest thing we need to talk about today is just really, are we good with self-eval in the spring? And then are we good with the superintendent timeline? I did ask, did we have the policies in here?
I gave it to everybody.
Okay,
I'm thinking that's all on the computer and you have printouts here.
Oh, yeah, it's right here,
What
evaluation.
to do.
so.
Like the stuff here, I'm like.
It's this paper. So the other thing I wanted to just, look at was our policy to make sure our policy was in line with, we just readopted this on the year. I think it's good.
Like,
Yeah,
you do.
I think they,
We already made that
Yeah.
change, so. At least once a year, yeah. Prior to conducting the evaluation, yeah, this is good. I just wanted to have that for reference. Okay, so Brent, you have anything to add before we?
I mean, just, going through this new, we've used that same tool for a long time. And these basically are the superintendent standards for, serving a district. And so this was different, but it was really good. It, really kind of framed. I'm really happy that we went through that we have an active strategic plan now with some really clear markers. And then within those 7 kind of areas to really kind of show where we can grow. I was telling Michael earlier, I go, year 1 and 2 for me to actually, be able to fill this out and see where to go would have been like, whoa, but now that we have some things in place, we have a strategic plan, we have positions like Javier's and Kelly's and surrounding our team and our admin and our staff. I feel good about this. Really gives us a direction to grow in certain areas. So
That's really good feedback too, for Kristen, I think as well.
Yeah.
Too, that.
Yes.
I've done so, you see my goals the last 8 years on, kind of picking them out of our old tool. But this was nice to really kind of see where are we in some of these areas and how can we improve and how are we gonna measure it? So, so I anticipate when I have those measurable, measured by, those quarterly updates, I can say, hey, this is an example of, meeting this effort, so. That's really all I got.
Yeah, and I think that was a good little plug, not that we need to worry about it now, but I think
Good
that
to
is,
stand.
and it's a good thing for a board to think about is you've gotta meet your superintendent where they're at, and so, you know, I think something that would be beneficial for us to think about in setting up future boards and future superintendents is how does this evaluation fit when you've got a brand new superintendent? You know, what does that look like? How do you make sure that that
That's
person
what I was wondering
feels
about
supported and, yeah.
the board members that may possibly.
Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, all of that, so, yeah, it was really good feedback to hear that, so. So. Are we talking about goals now? So Brent did share a copy of his goals.
Yeah, I think goals and then kind of that, where is it best meet the quarterly kind of reflections on.
Mm-hmm.
And is that an exec, is it an open session, is it, you know, where, how that looks.
I think it should be in an executive session. That's my opinion.
Is that your choice, Brent?
I think it's your choice.
If it was your choice.
A good point, I think we can review it in an executive session, but I do think it's good to share an open session.
Yeah,
So kind of the process we
Yeah,
had.
yeah, so, and I'll say, hey, this is what I'm prepared to, you know, this is my update on my goals and evaluation and things of that nature. Here's what I'm gonna share in open session and, you know, a lot of it will be similar and you can ask questions in open session and, go from there.
As far as timing wise, could we do those quarterly check-ins? During an executive session before a board meeting, would that be the best time to do that, or should they be separately scheduled, or?
I think they can be the same time, same
Yeah.
day.
That's kind of my thought, just
Mhm.
put them on the calendar.
So
Okay.
what does that look like as far as, oh, we are,
I mean, does it make sense actually I mean, we have a second week and second board meeting in November. Now is a work session, does it make sense to do it that first one then?
Mhm.
so right, if we're backtracking, March is when your evaluation would be, so
Yeah.
one would be like, so that's what I was thinking, like, if we looked at the
Exactly.
calendar quarterly, is, okay, so
Oh, yeah.
February.
Yeah,
So if your evaluation has to be turned in and we're
Yeah.
looking at, so then what do the quarters look like throughout the year? And how do they tie in naturally, maybe with
Yeah,
already
I think in
updates that-
August would be a reflection of the last year,
Okay.
which would be good, that's a natural one, that's not really the start, it's kind of the end, but it's actually the start kind of. And then probably in October, November-ish. You know, maybe that first meeting in November and keep the work session a work session. And January. Are you getting all this, Denise? Are you whispering so you don't get on the
Would that be something that would happen like right prior before your evaluation, or would that be something that would potentially be part of what you share in your evaluation as far as?
Yeah, I think the word quarterly is getting me a little mixed up
Okay.
because that's like
Yeah.
4 times a year and we don't,
it's really periodic.
Yeah.
It's more-
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
good to know too, because
Yeah.
I heard quarterly and I thought, okay, like every 3 months,
Yeah,
really, so.
I mean, if you
that's-
follow, you know, the fiscal calendar, it would happen sometime between July and September. Well, it would be the same, really, just
so one may
So,
happen
okay.
after my evaluation, so if we did August, wrapped up the year, we did a first meeting in November. We did do we have 1 or 2 meetings in January?
2, but I think one's a work session,
Oh, one's a JAB meeting now,
chat meeting.
so, so maybe,
actually.
well, it maybe after the JAB meeting, maybe that first meeting in February. Because then it would wrap up, you would hear from the school, so
that
August,
would be right
first
before
meeting in
your
November,
evaluation.
first meeting in February, and then a meeting in April or May, maybe April. Or maybe first meeting in May. it would be after the evaluation stuff, but it would still, I mean, I'm not, these are yearly goals, not till March 15th. So, how's that sound?
August, November, February, and May. It is quarterly.
So,
3 months apart.
well, I was trying to get 4 in between March 15th. and that's where I was. That's where I was.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
One is when you're setting your new goals for the next year. Does any one of those check-ins capture around your setting your new goals?
I think this meeting next year is, like, that's this discussion.
That's what
I
this is,
think.
okay, all right,
Yeah, I think you have the last one in May and then,
okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
understand that I was.
yeah.
And I want it to make sense, right?
Yeah,
And I want it to
absolutely.
not be a burden, I want it to, I wanna have it make sense.
I mean, I can be fairly confident that we're gonna navigate through this year, and the conversation next year is like, oh,
This-
we may
this
want, we
was
may
the-
adjust this, or this may feel a
Yeah.
little bit different, but.
Yeah. Good point.
But I, actually not just talking through that out loud, I think that makes okay sense.
So then the actual eval would be the second half of February.
Or that first meeting in
Or
March.
first, yeah.
I think that first meeting in March to actually do the eval makes sense, because then you have that February update. You have the time to say, hey, you're going to,
Yeah.
here's how you're gonna evaluate, this is what we need from the board.
Mhm.
And then it gives it basically a month from that last update to.
To do the
eval.
evaluation, I like that,
Got that?
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
March
I got it
6th, but then you won't share it during regular session until April 3rd. Right?
Is that what we did this year?
We have, oh, because it's a work
Because
session
we have a
in,
work session
in March, not a board meeting.
That's okay.
How about February 20th for eval and March 6th?
I don't care when we share it, I just want the
Doesn't matter.
time, the board to have time to really process and evaluate, and. We can come back from spring break and do that. I mean, it'll be. Essentially done, I mean.
Well,
complete-
you're not doing it during spring break, and not gonna lie, the rest of us don't really get spring break, so.
Okay, great. I think that sounds good. So we'll check in August, November. Did everyone have a chance to read through the goals? Did you have any?
I don't know why, I missed it during my first
Okay.
perusal through, so I
Okay.
cannot
All
say
right.
it out loud in public meetings.
No, it's
But
okay.
the first few sentences that I read looked really great, and I wish I had read it prior.
Now, the August one will be a lot of, Javier and I, saying, hey, this is where we are, this is where we move the dial, here's where we have. Some attention, and go from there, so.
Do we take action on those at all? Has the board taken action on your goals in the past, or is it more of a?
Usually I've drafted them for you in August, and,
Yeah.
if I hear no feedback, I eliminate the watercolor draft.
Well, hopefully this process is better than.
Yes,
You shouldn't,
yeah.
it shouldn't be, well, I didn't hear any feedback on my goals, so. The whole idea is to provide support for it, so, okay, good. All right, good stuff.
And I should, next superintendent report in August, I can say, hey, share
Yeah.
your goals, if you have any comments, so
Perfect.
we can definitely do that.
Okay, next item is, the annual agenda items, and Denise has some really helpful notes from what we discussed at the last meeting in there, which is great.
And then did you just add the 4 new updates thing for our monthly? The months that they just determined for to have executive sessions, okay.
Oh, she whispers this, okay. If you start signing, you're gonna need some help with that. Okay,
Timeline for student rep.
any feedback on the annual agenda items?
Do we open the can of student rep election forms right here, notes regarding annual Discuss
a-
timeline for student rep. Well, JAB was already moved to January, that's done. We just discussed when we want Brent's quarterly check-in, so that's done. As the timeline for student reps, I mean, how, I still would love it if it happened in the spring. And then we had the summer opportunity to ramp up and instead of trying to get it done in the fall.
And then they could come to a meeting and know, you know, they'd be a little bit more prepared. And
Yeah, I think, you know, one thing that popped in my head, and not that this happens very often, but it does happen, is a student could apply for and be appointed as student rep in the spring and not be at our school in the fall.
Yeah.
And so I think we just would need to have a process to handle, you know, that unlikely yet possible.
Well, we typically
eventuality.
have 3 or 4 anyway, so,
Right,
I mean, it's
Right.
not like we only have 1 or 2.
Yeah.
We typically have,
yeah,
and so we could address it when that happens.
And we got a
and
student
let-
rep move during the year too
Yeah.
before.
We've had,
Yeah.
so
and then the only
that's
other
what it
thing
feels to me as far as looking at spring versus fall.
okay.
Cause life happens all year round.
Yeah, sounds good. And then the only other thing is just. Is it feasible timeline wise with, for our staff and students that time of year? What are we talking about in spring, like? May?
I would
Or-
say even like, well, I would say even maybe closer to April, first part of May, so that you're deciding, when is leadership?
Yeah, I
When
almost
is-
would combine it with all that stuff,
With
so
all
it's all
the-
the same, and
Yes.
it's busy, I feel like we're running to the finish line in the fall, and if that's what we're gonna do in the spring, it's gonna be the same feel.
Okay,
But if it's say, hey, you have student body president, you have student representatives of the board, you have. FFA officer election, you have
Like, they're
whatever,
all
yeah.
happening, right, at the
Yeah.
spring level, so let's,
when do those happen?
Good question. I think May, I mean,
Okay.
well, yeah,
and we could just put it in there and we could. Hey, we can have Kaylin just say, hey, this is,
Yeah,
I mean, I think it, you know, it's when they're ready, but if we say, hey, this is election season for us.
mhm.
And
it's also going to be our election season next May. So. Keep that in mind, that's true.
Well, but how much outside of the board meeting are we actually doing? For student representative elections? Outside of regular board meeting attendance, what
Oh, for student reps?
responsibility?
Oh, yeah,
Right, so even
Right.
though, okay, so it's election season, but it's also,
yeah,
we come to the school board meetings, it's really more on, and if there are, if it's another role.
yeah.
To then add into that,
I'm not really understanding why we would do it in the spring.
so that.
Because it
we
seems
could
like
start
May
the-
and then June is graduation.
So because then they would be able to start running in September, we wouldn't have to wait until the middle meeting in October to actually have reps.
They would be ready.
They
to
would
go.
be ready to
Like,
go.
have them
No,
start in May and then.
No,
No.
Oh, that's- okay.
it's starting May for the
Like, that
next school
doesn't
year.
make any sense. I don't
Yeah.
like that at all.
and
Yeah.
so then they have the opportunity potentially while the summer is to come to a meeting also to see.
That makes sense.
Gives time
There's
for onboarding.
there's potential opportunity for one-on-one maybe mentoring. I don't know if there's opportunity, I know summer board conference will swing away, but if there was
Yes,
opportunity. I think there's talk about, I don't
It
think.
costs $20,000.
What's more? Sorry, zero.
actually, the board is not a big issue,
Add
but,
two zeros.
there is talk of different options,
Like doing it in Medford or something, that would be crazy.
Sarah sending something. That's a
Well,
big time
here's the
baseball.
deal, right? Like, it used to happen in June,
Yeah.
right? Now it happens in August and we're back together in November for annual convention.
Right.
So they're really close to each other,
Yeah.
they're expensive, they're not as well attended, they're
Yeah.
expensive,
Yeah.
so
Here's as
there's
far
talk of
as,
changing.
there's
it.
talk of changing it.
so, but there, So that, but there could be opportunities for student reps in the
For student
summer for
reps,
other things.
Right, yes.
So if we did that, if we had them elected in May sometime, then we could really pass the torch in that first meeting in
Right.
June.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's his last meeting
Mhm.
and the other's his first meeting,
Extent.
so.
There's your recognition component.
I really like it, you totally sold me on it.
And it could be mentor type, right? 'Cause
Oh.
then they
They
know,
could come to the last meeting and.
right, and they would say, in my mind, they would, oh, Denise is looking at me like I'm ready. In my mind, they would set up together and there would be like, so they would have that mentor, so it's not like blind, it's like, okay, you have.
Did you have something, Denise? Say it loud and proud.
So we basically go without student reps this year.
No, we
No,
would
we
still do
would-
it in the fall
We
this year.
would still do it. in the
We're
fall.
talking about, we're way ahead. We're talking about for 20.
So what I would do is I'd
5,
take that,
26.
appoint student reps in September, and then I'd take that same line for 25-26 school year. Put it in May, appoint 25-26 student representatives to the board. And then in June, something about, actually, we probably should put that in there so we remember that that's their last board meeting. Last board meeting for current year student reps, first meeting for next year's student reps. Are you following me, Sarah? Thank you.
I think that's a great idea.
It all happens right then too, right? The high school does the shift, the seniors come to the
Yeah.
floor, everybody switches. It's very graduation season. It's very next year focused. Everyone's starting to really look ahead to that, so.
I also like the idea of formally recognizing our student reps and inviting their parents
Yeah,
to.
Yeah,
I think that would be, we could
Going
have
to
a
dinner
whole,
with them.
have a whole thing at the end of the year, a whole thing, whole shindig.
that can take the place of accentuate the positive, that.
okay, sure.
Well, and I tell it the whole shindig.
Okay.
And I think when you were talking about election, I think that that's because the election process starts in like the election's in May, but the new person doesn't start until July. So I think when you were saying, how does that work? Well, you've got a new person that's only, if you have a new person, that's only a few months under their belt, trying to figure out all this stuff, and then you adding student reps to it. I think it makes more sense to do that before you have potential new,
New board member.
new board members,
Yeah.
because there's already so much to do, and then having like new board, then that way the student reps can see a meeting with the old board members and kind of know what is going on, is my.
And I don't, I mean,
Hopefully, it doesn't, there's not that much of a change.
I don't anticipate Caitlin or the high school, they just wanna know. And sometimes it's like, comes like, we're talking about this in March and April, and they're like, ooh.
Yeah,
If we say, hey, we're gonna do elections in May, let's kind of set up an election.
Mhm.
You know, it might get that, everybody that's having elections at that time to really kind of streamline that, so.
Yeah. I like that.
Okay, good. Anything else on annual agenda items?
It looks like some do we wanna did we add anywhere for some safety reports or SROs to come in here? I think maybe that could be in
March.
January, because then we start looking at the SRO contracts.
Oh, okay. SRO in January. And,
What kind of safety report the SROs can,
okay.
Can we do? What is this? Sorry, can we do an SRO report in August or September? They do their SRO training, I think it's this week in Salishan. So it kind of would make sense to have SRO maybe August, beginning of September as well, like twice a year. And then that way we can talk about what they learn in their trainings, because that's been conversation of our contract, right? Like, what are they learning? How are, like, I don't know, maybe that would be, I'm just throwing it out there. Cause they're also gonna do training with the district, so. I don't know when a good time is, but August, September seems to make sense in my mind, but let me know if my mind's not making sense.
well, your mind makes sense. That's a pretty busy, maybe that first meeting in October. And then maybe in January again. Cause those kind of meet up with our safety committee meetings too.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
And then
And
we
it
can
meets
kind
up
of, this is
with
how the
kind
year
of-
has started, here's how the drills we've done, here's what we learned at the summer conference. I don't know if that pushes too far into the fall or,
No, I think like in a couple months, they know, I don't wanna wait too long.
Yeah.
Because, you know, things go,
yeah,
but I think it would be nice to know, cause that's some of the questions of like. What do you learn in summer conference and then what was helpful and not, I mean, I would like, you know, pros and cons and how can we improve, like what's helpful and what's not helpful in the trainings, or what other trainings would you like to see the district do at the beginning of the year that would be help with safety, right? Like, are there some safety trainings that the SRO thinks would be more helpful?
Well, and also we went to this training and this was something that we thought might be good to implement, or
Right.
we were, you know, we're all of those.
I know Sergeant Lehman and at least in our last interagency meeting, he had a lot of feedback.
Oh, good.
And things like that, yeah, and a lot of really good feedback.
Oh, good.
So I think that doing it in January is sufficient.
Just
Just
one
one.
year.
Yeah, I think that's sufficient. I think all the things you're talking about are encompassed in like the safety meetings, and I just don't know if it's our.
You want it quarterly, you just want once a year? Or,
I just
That-
don't know. Not necessarily what they would share, but what we would do with that information when they share it in October.
well, I think we're talking like program report.
we're
SRO.
talking like
Yeah.
update,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
update.
Like quarterly, safety reports, those could happen after our safe schools meeting.
Right.
I think the
So,
last one. and
yeah,
It made the most sense because I was able to take my
Yeah.
notes and then write a report about it.
Maybe that makes sense, maybe at our, we are talking about safety meetings. So rather than having it, I think where my mind just went on was like, I could think of a lot more things I want more frequent updates on than that.
Then SROs and.
Not that it's not important, but I just, but maybe that could fold into the safety updates. And have our SROs give a report at
I
this.
would be fine if we had safety, I just feel like once a year for SRO and school safety is not enough. But if we
Right.
include more, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, we'll have more frequent safety. Updates, where did I just see a note on that?
And you meet quarterly, and so we're talking about getting an
Safety
update from
reports.
you or
The mayor.
from those,
Whoever.
from those, yes, okay.
and maybe we see if someone of the SROs wants to join in that and we could do that.
I feel like I mean, I don't know our new SSRO that well, but I feel like they're
Why don't we have,
open to joining our meeting.
why don't we just have an agenda item? That's, well, that's committee reports. And then whatever committee falls under that,
Like for,
Oh,
yeah.
like it was-
it would be on every,
Well,
it
it
would
may
be on
be
every
like
agenda.
audit or whatever, so it would just be like committee,
Yeah,
right, is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
just be
Like
committee-
whatever
committee reports, and then whatever committee met within that time frame of the meeting would share their reports.
Would we want to take that information that we were gonna share and give it to Denise before the meeting so that she has the information on who's going to be sharing?
She can say
Right.
yes, for sure.
Yeah, definitely, yeah,
So it's not like just so random, like.
Right.
who's gonna
Or
be-
at least like say, hey, we plan to give a report, maybe not
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
gonna share, but
so then it's every, or maybe it's once a month,
yeah.
maybe it's a once a month
I like
committee
that, I like
committee
once a month.
reports,
Mhm.
yeah. And then whatever committee needs to report that month, we coordinate with Denise and we make sure.
I'm just gonna say, I am not that organized to do that. So, I mean, I will try my best.
You're doing for OSBA?
Well, like, I don't know, what page we're gonna want.
Well, we're gonna get to committee assignments.
So like the SIA, like when they
Right.
came and did a report and you had just had a meeting,
Right.
it would just be sharing out whatever meeting.
Yeah,
they
but-
went to.
We have EDI, we have Safe Schools, we have
Right.
audit, we have Culver Road, we have.
I think those are the
Routes.
committees. I don't think OSB legislation is.
Okay.
No.
committee report.
Don't worry, we're keeping that as it's.
It's like, okay, I will try my best because.
So EDI won't have its separate thing
Okay.
anymore, we'll just have once a
Committee
month,
reports.
first meeting of the month, committee
Oh.
reports.
Okay.
And we'll either have a report or we don't.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So, okay,
I'm
so
just-
it's, go ahead.
I was just, okay, yeah, I like it, we'll work with it.
We're not taking OSBA.
Sorry about that, I'm just like thinking, oh my gosh.
Our committees are defined.
Come to the board meeting and then you always tell the meeting before what I'm gonna do.
The
Oh,
only thing
goodness.
is,
No, Dawn.
we get, I'm just, how often do we get the financial update? Someone would-
It's usually the second meeting,
Usually the second.
So I would say, I was just gonna recommend that maybe
it's opposite.
one,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
meeting was committee,
Good.
one meeting was financial, and then.
And we do the bond and we're almost done with bond stuff, aren't we?
In bonding facilities, I mean, I think we could,
Do that once. a
that
year.
could be quarterly too, actually. I mean, it's,
Or we still make
Superintendent
John
report.
up to the meetings though.
or it could be in the superintendent report pretty easily.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, poor John, I mean, if we change the agenda, then it's fine, but poor John always has to stay. And like, sometimes he only has, sometimes he has really great, like a lot of things going on, and sometimes it's like, well. It's like you stayed to talk for 1.5 minutes.
And he also could do memos on that, just say, hey, this is our Christmas, these are winter break, projects, these are our, spring break projects, this is what we have, you
It
know.
can be like a financial
Yeah,
update.
yeah.
Yeah, with, yeah, facilities. I like that because if we, and I like the idea of where we're headed, putting more emphasis and importance on information and discussion and, you know, really making that a feature of the meeting is we gotta look at that time and use it wisely too. And so, you know, I think makes sense.
So at Pace, this is, oh, sorry, this is for Justin, there's a part on the agenda that is like. I don't know what it's called, relevant meetings our members went to or something, that's what it's called. But basically, so like, if I went to, if I went
Board
to a
reports.
meeting, well, it wasn't, yeah, like a board report, if I was at. I don't know, Chamber of Commerce or something and wanted to report, I don't know if that falls under committee, but it might be something I don't know, I'm just.
Yeah, it'd be a board report
Okay.
item on the agenda.
Denise, what were you saying?
So for clarification, for the August agenda, are we gonna leave it like this and then in September, start with committee reports? Or do we wanna start it on August?
Well, August will be a first, right, of the month, so.
There's only one in August, August 15th, there's only one.
I think here's what I would suggest. You wanna hear my suggestion?
Yes.
I would keep August the way it is, and then you could share like where.
Yeah.
This is, you may have noticed, we're rearranging the,
Yes.
agenda. We're also gonna look at doing committee reports differently and things of that nature, kind of setting it up, so.
Yeah.
But August will, like,
We're still flipping info and.
yeah, still
Okay.
flipping what you, I think, discussed earlier, but, not necessarily do committee, like,
Yeah,
share that, or
Okay.
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah.
Well, especially with us having 3 board members missing, it might be good to kind of like.
Yeah,
Yeah. Actually, for that reason, I would say maybe we just keep the agenda the same.
And I would disagree. Because
They're
you
gonna-
can't keep going back, you have to move
Yeah.
forward.
Well, they're
It's
just gonna
important.
show up and it's gonna be different.
Well, I'm
So-
saying the
But
time with
you
the
know-
August, but just to continue to revisit what we have just spent all.
Oh,
this
no,
time.
no, I'm not
Okay,
saying that.
that's
What
where
what
I,
I'm
that
saying
was my.
is. The change in the agenda, they can read that beforehand, but not understanding like what board,
Oh, yes, oh, yeah,
committee is,
yeah.
that might be like, whoa, I did, you
No,
know,
I think
what's.
what Brent suggested was,
Exactly.
yes.
do the new
I'm for
format,
what-
but really kind of set the stage up for what the
Yes.
information and discussion is gonna look like in the future.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Well,
I'm
right.
good with that.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. Okay, anything else? We get them? Okay, Culver Road property. Brent?
Yeah, there's a few, just, kind of updates on here, and I'll just kind of go through as I, started to kind of brainstorm on what, where we are and what, how I see kind of moving forward. So just general info, we've submitted DEQ voluntary cleanup. I emailed Jonathan Williams this week to see if we've heard anything. He hasn't. Either is Jay, but he says that we should be assigned a field rep, or I'm not sure what they call them, in the next couple months. I anticipate in the fall, and then we'll start understanding what we have to do and where we have to go from there. It is so nice to have consultants that understand. Jonathan Williams is amazing. CSA is keeping a lot of other things kind of on pace, and it's just nice to have great consultants. Boys and Girls Club, we are working on a letter of intent, which is essentially a non-binding on some terms of what it will look like moving forward. We shared a draft with them, and they had some questions, and so I think we'll have something for the board to review August 15th, so to look at, and that will be kind of setting the stage to do the next steps, and essentially allow them to officially kind of kick off some building campaign things, and knowing what they're getting into, and starting the process of an actual sales agreement for the partition. And CSA is really working with us on that, and Boys and Girls Club may can hire CSA as well, I don't know, to do their part of it. As far as other pieces of the property, I think where we left ODP, it was, we're gonna meet this fall with some representatives of the board. And then I think, you know, out of that discussion, it really kind of, we'll talk about the next steps of what that may look like, and really just have an open dialogue on where we are, you know, information and, you know, direction on where we want to go, and then see about what bring something back to the board on some, you know, direction or next steps with ODP. Little League, I met with their reps, and they have they're talked with the city of Talent as well, and there I think there's some, you know, opportunity to help extend that time that they have there. I don't want to speak for Little League or the city of Talent by any means, but I think their discussion doesn't work. Next season would be their last season technically on paper right now. And then they will have you know, a board meeting in the fall with the Little League to see what direction they want to go into. If they want to see if they can get an extension of a few years, see if they want to set up something to really start doing a campaign. You know, what that lease agreement will look like, we'll have to really kind of get with their board and our board and see about infrastructure. Sometimes you set those up with the more capital infrastructure and improvements you make, the longer term lease you have. So that'll have to be something that this board will have to discuss. I think something like that, it could be wise to have a proposal of you know, benefits to the community, the strategic plan, what you expect, what do you want Phoenix Talent Little League to be, you know, where do you see yourself in 10 years? How do you see yourself growing and supporting our community? And they've been patient, they've been a great partner, and I think that's been some really collegial conversations, and they're excited, but it's also big bite to chew off. So so the soccer fields, the turf soccer fields, we're going to see kind of where we are with some funding that we have to improve athletic fields after we kind of do our seismic and things of that nature. I think our consultants, again, ZCS, who's done a lot of work for us. Josh Modine and his team are just amazing. I think they're ready to you know, start kind of doing the next step. They did the concept plan, they've done all that, they've done the infrastructure, they've done that they know that property. I think it'd be wise for us to really kind of get some costs on that. If you guys have driven by Culver Field, those fields are used all the time, hundreds of kids all the time on those grass fields. The nice thing about this design is that you know, if we did do 2 turf soccer fields, we'd still have 1 grass field, so it actually you know, create a solid surface that's weatherproof, and sustainable and still have a grass field, so we'd have 3 total fields. And then that upper part, softball, baseball, turf setting would be something that we would also look at seeing what that price would be. I think the X factor in all of that is what we're going to, the city's gonna require us to put infrastructure in to meet those needs, like that one baseball, softball is a little further up. If we have to put all the infrastructure up there, that'll be a decision point, or if we could do infrastructure on the Culver Road side, but kind of gravel it up there until we're really ready to develop the Little League, but get started on some turf fields up there. So Jay's looking into what kicks in where, and we'll have some answers with that in the next few months. We start to look at some potentials of development. It's getting real now, by the way, which is nice, and Boys and Girls Club super excited, and it's still gonna take a while, but we're to the fun part, I think, so.
We're still talking water lines. We're not to the total. We're not to the total. platform yet.
Yeah,
We're
you're
still
right.
talking Infrastructure and parking.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
go ahead.
I just have one more
No,
bullet point. So long range facility plan and pro forma, I think it'd be wise for the board to invest in. You guys know what a pro forma is, where we really look at all the concept plan, things that we want to do and infrastructure, and basically estimate those costs out and really see where and how we want to kind of plan for that whole development. And that'll be a little bit of cost to us, but it'll be really clear on what we can chew off, what we can, okay, if we have a sale of coal mine, where we could, dedicate some of those funds if we wanted to use that for this facility. There's a $25,000 long range facility grant that comes out in December that John's preparing to apply for. And that will really tell the story on our current facilities, where we are with them, with all of our bond updates, all of our bond projects will be essentially done. And within that plan, which will be different than the one we did before the bond, it'll really have some specific data on student enrollment estimate. Those were kind of estimates, but this will be more specific on how we expect growth in our area. And CSA won't be able to do this one because they're not qualified to do some of those things, so we'll have to hire what the state contract is, and then but it'll be a detailed long range facility plan that we can have for the next 30 years. So,
Which I think will be really, I think it will also help in addition to potentially getting a grant for the facility to put that together. But then, once that component is put, won't that help us potentially go for grants?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
then we can say, we
This is
put
what
this
we have,
work in
yeah.
and this is our plan
Yeah.
and then also, being strategic, right? And we're not starting here and, oh, we wish we would have done this first, so,
absolutely.
yes.
I mean, the only thing that is kind of we're trying to get Boys and Girls Club out of the gate. I think they're ready, and I think that'll be nice to start breaking some ground. If there can be a deal that's feasible for them and they can start getting some infrastructure up to where they need it, that only helps us with not having us bear that cost either. I
Do you
think
have
that's,
any idea how much, it's probably a dangerous thing to say in a public meeting, since nobody thought tennis courts were gonna be $1 million. But how much was, I guess I could ask this question, and not to put you on the spot, but how much was our turf field? Like, what are we looking at? Can you give me
Yeah.
any sort of ballpark for what 2 turf soccer fields look like?
so the nice thing about, this one, and I have to go back and look exactly how we did this, but when we put the track in, we weren't necessarily gonna put the turf in. But we curved everything to put turf in, which is a pretty big expense based on the bond. And then when we just wanted to say, let's turf this field, I think it ended up being like $800,000 or something like that. I'll have to see what that was.
sounds.
Less
that
than
sounds-
tennis courts.
Yeah.
Oh, right, well, that's what I'm saying. Some of it was tied in and some of it we already had contractors and
Right.
equipment available.
Exactly, and so if we can tie in with that with some, say Boys and Girls Club has a contractor doing this. We get bids on this and that contractor may bid on, oh, we already have staging, we already have the equipment here. It's exactly what happened here
Okay.
on a $1.2 or $3 million job was for $800,000. And I think we got some pretty good help from Midori Knife River too, so. So I don't
I
know, but
understand.
GCS will have those estimates, this is what they do all the time.
Yeah.
And so they'll have a pretty good number, and obviously they'll have an initial number, and then we'll have to see where. Well, do we want John to do the project machine, and you know, all that sort of stuff, so.
You can ask questions about turf when you're at the conferences, there's always turf.
There's
there.
always
Yeah.
people up there, but.
I have a few questions. So this is kind of a three-part question, but I don't know how to say it separately. Is there a way we can do like flexibility in the leases? So that like, obviously we get first turn on things, but sometimes, like, for instance, when we had that preschool, it's like, I felt like the price was a little bit high, like, there's some expectations of like, if this falls through, we want, you know, cost or something, and then. Also, things change, as we know, with the Almeida Fire and with other things, if there's some kind of flexibility as. Like, if we need your building for something, like, we got a huge grant for something in summer program, and we would maybe need. ODP for summer program, or, you know, the XYZ, I'm
Yeah.
thinking things change in 5-10 years. We may need those buildings on times that the other people aren't needing the buildings, and I think Boys and Girls Club do a great job at being flexible and letting us, but if the person changed. Then maybe it wouldn't be, and also with ODP, I wanna have clear expectations as well, of, you know, like. If we need these buildings for.
Their district.
Right, but I want clear expectations on, you know, this building can be used for other things if need be. Especially if there's times when there's downtime, and I know Tiffany has talked to me about, you know, different items. If we could get grants for programs for kids and we need the space, that would be my first choice. So I want flexibility with clear and expectations of. We want first, we don't, I mean, if we're gonna get the land for $1, paying ridiculous amount of money later. I just wanna make sure that we're doing fair, and I think it should be reciprocal, and that. You know, the kids should be the first thing. Not that they're not.
And I think we do have some, when we start doing this letter of intent, which is not binding, we can do this, and then the sales agreement will be really the one that
Okay.
is structured in. And right now, we don't have $1 on it, we have a pretty decent number on it,
Okay.
because we're gonna have to incur some cost to get this going.
Okay,
And we don't necessarily just wanna bear that cost, and we don't wanna. We want them to bear some cost too, so,
I wasn't sure how that was working, like if we. Did the land really less expensive, did they then commit to a certain amount of infrastructure?
yeah.
You know, however it's worded, we could,
And Thad and Jay and I spent a couple hours in here last Friday, really kind of getting this letter of intent. And I mentioned the first right of refusals, the timeline expectation, what you do after a certain amount of years, all that sort of stuff.
Okay,
And,
thank you.
and so when it comes to the board, if you have some questions, or it's not as detailed, or is not as protective, then we can certainly look at doing that. Right now, just the initial. Because Boys and Girls Club's really new at this, well, we're new at this too, but
right.
we're just kind of, hey, this is our first,
you know.
yeah, and it's actually happening backwards. They should have done the letter of intent. Because they wanna have the act, but it's to help them out and say, let's just give you what we wanna do and you guys decide. So they just sent an email back today with some questions, sent it to Thad. But I think by August 15th, we'll have something that both of the boards can look at, and if there's changes from there, there's changes from there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet.
My
Thank you.
second thing is, and this might be too late, I don't know. In the planning processes that I have been in the past with the district, the architects do this dream list and it drives me crazy. I get why we do the dream list, but someone's feelings always get hurt. When we did the high school, it was like, I want this and I want that, and then we can't afford everybody's dream list, and then someone's like, well, they got this and that. Like, how do we make this a more equitable, fair process? Because I feel like the process that we've done before isn't equitable and fair, and it gets people's expectations high, and then it also starts a rumor mill, and the district is going to buy a, big pool and with slides and stuff, and that's not maybe what we're gonna do, but that was somebody's dream. And so how do we do this so that, I mean, I don't know if that's Sarah's dream or not, but how do we do it so that it's equitable and we're not getting people's feelings hurt and the rumors aren't spreading? And I know the architects really love to do that, but is there a way that we can step in and, I don't know, I mean, there's some good things that come from dream big, but it seems like every single time people are just devastated for the next 2 or 3 meetings because they didn't get what they wanted.
Well, I feel like we've already done that. We already kind of got through a lot of that to the
Yeah, we
conceptual
had those
plan that we're,
stakeholders.
we're at now.
and
So kind of
neighbors
moving
and
forward with what we've got now.
Sarah
We've
was
already
devastated
spent,
again
yeah.
with the pool that got packed really early, so. But we kind of did, well, we did do that.
We did, yeah.
And I'm
And,
too late, that's why I was.
yeah,
No,
and it
We already
was.
had we already had that meeting where
Okay.
everybody was upset.
And Pete.
I was at that meeting. Everybody.
For future, can we think about, not now, but in the future? kind
I
of
totally understand what you're saying, yeah,
Because
it's always
your
felt
office
weird.
that gets flooded.
Yeah, it's always felt weird to say, hey, anything you want,
Yeah.
and then it's like, well, it's not really anything you want.
Just kidding.
Yeah,
They're trying to brainstorm and stuff, but it just it feels like it just deflates people and it's.
I think part of that is expectation setting, though, right? I mean, because you have to have, in order to come up with the best outcome, you have to have all the grand ideas on the table, don't you? I mean, is
No.
it just better expectation setting? But who decides, I don't know.
Well, I
But
know,
why
I
people decide?
Well, yes, of course.
Some of these, like, they're like dream big, and some of the stuff is like, that's never gonna happen. So, like,
But then you get invested in it or really tied to it, and then your feelings can get hurt because someone else's idea didn't happen and. So
But-
my idea didn't happen and yours did, and
I feel like if there are clear expectations from the beginning and there's a transparent process for how things are selected that make it to the final project, that should help, right? I mean, because to me, it's what is gonna serve the greatest good for the most amount of students, right? Isn't that-
should, key word in there is should.
Yeah, that should be a process that happens,
And it is a process that happens, but along the way,
yeah.
but then, it's like. I guess it's, especially with this, but there's different parts, it's like, what's. It gets to you think this is more important, you think
Yeah.
the fields are more.
yeah,
And,
Right.
I remember now, I have one more thing, but, so it's too late now, but anyways, I'm in the future. My last thing was, has there been discussion about facilities like bathrooms and that stuff? Cause we're not gonna be on a well anymore. Hopefully at some time we're gonna be on city water so we can improve our facilities, yes.
oh yeah, there's, that whole concept plan has.
Have you not seen the
Number
concept?
of,
I have, but
It was
it's
a
so
long
dang
time.
confusing.
It's a, lo- and well, it was a long time ago,
And
and I
then I
was
think-
looking for it, but I know it's not public.
Yeah, I can-
Yeah.
Things got
afterwards I can
changed,
show you
like,
what
well, the
it is.
field isn't gonna really be there, it's gonna be there, and it was just like. and then the bathrooms are gonna be here, but it was like,
Well,
what are the bathrooms going to be? Are they gonna be like?
is some of that gonna be addressed to in the long range?
Okay,
facility? Will that be
perfect.
more defined?
Yeah, keep in mind, that's concept planned. So, once we start building and permitting and things of that
Okay,
nature, and so where they are now is our best guess that we really kind of tied through and using ZCS's expertise. And then once we get to permitting and just, fully designing and cost, but yeah, it's gonna be real bathrooms.
Okay.
Yeah, and real parking spaces and, so. yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, well, item G, we already discussed, so
Oh, us.
check that off. So committee assignments, half our board is not here at the moment. So I don't know if we wanna bring that back on the 15th, or if
I
there's
think
some,
we should.
yeah,
We've done it at future board meetings, I mean, not future, past board meetings, we've done it during a regular agenda item,
Yeah.
it doesn't take very long.
no, this literally takes 5 minutes, but one thing we need to talk about is negotiations. We will have,
Is that a committee?
well, we need to talk about who's going to serve on the bargaining.
Is that happening already? Are we
Gonna
going,
start
are you going back to the table already?
It's gonna start in 25, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll start next spring.
Michael, I'm ready.
Nope.
Michael's
I'm
out.
gonna respectfully
You're not doing it, Michael?
invite one of my colleagues to do it next time.
Is it, you had the conversation, so let's throw this out there. You had the conversation was it necessary to have a board member there? Did you think it was beneficial or not? I mean, I didn't,
Yeah.
am I sharing out of,
Um,
do you feel like it's beneficial for a board member to be there?
I do, I think, but I think that's a conversation we can have. As we get closer probably, but I think for now it would be good
Do you
to.
think so? So it's Brent's nodding, so I'm,
Yeah, I think. That's a bigger question for perhaps another time that. I don't know that I would change that this cycle.
okay.
If we wanted to make a change like that, so, yeah, so and then when is classified? I know we have,
It'll be, well, everybody will be up
It'll be
next spring
everybody,
too, so we'll
okay.
have licensed, classified, confidential, administrative.
so will you add that, Denise, for this 15th?
What am I adding?
We're gonna bring this item back, committee assignments to the 15th, and then will you add negotiations, certified and classified as a? It's not really, but it kind of is, it's an assignment of a board.
No, that's fine. I just was giving you a little,
Yeah.
you know.
That is a huge.
No, it's,
And, well,
Yeah.
it's time.
yeah,
It's hard to have that the amount of time
It is.
that it,
Mhm.
so that's why truly, the amount of time that you spent
Mhm.
doing that, I don't
Wow.
know how many board members have that type of availability.
Yeah.
I'll just speak for my own self. I personally don't have that type of availability
For sure.
to do what you did
For
this
sure.
last time.
Yeah, for sure, yeah, that'll be. Yeah.
That's why I think it's great to put it on committee assignments, because it's a huge chunk of.
Yeah,
So has RAPS always been on there, or is that?
That's me.
The RAPS is, that's the behavioral support, it used to be, what was it called? Kind of the behavior team, Don's been on it for,
Oh, I thought this was new. Sorry.
Wraps, I have been on wraps?
well, it's now the behavior, I don't know if a board member's showing up, but that's kind of
I
like
didn't
the.
know. Can we go back to the committee thing? Yeah, I think I was on one a long time ago.
Yeah, it's our quarterly kind of behavior system, data,
Okay,
that sort of thing. RAPS is a new term for us this year,
okay,
but
but we have had board representation
on a
at
behavior,
this,
yeah,
at this,
yeah.
okay. I just thought I didn't recognize it.
okay, so we'll bring that back next time when we have everybody.
Can and we can have, oh, well, I'll bring this up when everyone's here because that's a better.
Okay. You gonna remember, or do you wanna bring it up now?
Well, I don't, I'm wondering why we have board representation at the audit.
I think it's,
To hear the audit report.
I think it's like a law that you have to do it. I think it's.
I think the audit has to be presented to us, but, oh. But I don't know that we have to,
I think we have to have an audit report, but I don't know that a board member has to be at the audit itself.
No, it's not during the like audit process, it's basically the final report when they give the report to Yasmin and myself and.
Doesn't Yasmin get that same report to us? Or is it a different report that they're giving?
No, it's the same report, but it's a little more detailed, and then what that typically happens is then the board. Representative gives that, shares kind of what the auditor shared in that.
Which
final
is
report.
typically from what Yasmin has typically shared. From my one sitting in of it, I don't know what my expectation level was, but I realized later. It didn't necessarily seem like something that was under a board purview when I sat in on it,
the initial meeting.
the initial
Yeah.
meeting. So that's all, but So
To quote the kids, it's giving, you have a CPA on your board energy is why maybe.
Right.
Maybe we
which
had
is fine,
somebody
which is why I
say-
thought I would bring this up when the CPA is in the room, but
Right.
I just wondered the need for that committee.
I'm pretty sure that in the other groups that I'm involved in, there's usually a board member at those audits as well. So at OSBA audit, there is technically like the secretary treasurer there.
I
Or
think it's-
somebody, I think it's just something that is done for transparency.
I would feel
And-
way more comfortable with the board member there rather than just staff
Yeah.
sharing what the audit is.
I think it's more because they always go so well, it probably feels a little more independent than it. Is really for some.
I really,
Appreciate
I
the
guess,
opportunity.
didn't understand what my role in being there was.
Just to listen.
I mean.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
that's fair.
And
I
if there's
think
something really
there's-
bad, call
You
me
know,
and go,
like-
Michael, there's something really bad.
You know,
I think it's also understanding, just getting a well-rounded view of what finances actually mean and what we're held
Yeah.
accountable to, and when you have a a mandatory audit of federal funding, because they're over $750,000, just.
Yeah, it's more about that. It's more knowledge and learning for the board member.
I think it's more of transparency, right? Instead of it being closed door, you're there, you're able to ask questions. It's more of like, because there are
terminology enough to ask a question.
well, but I guess the thing is, like, if
Yes.
because if we were a bad district per se, and the auditor said, well, we're really concerned about this, do you
Would
think
you
Yasmin's
trust
gonna
her?
come? I mean, I think she would, but if we had somebody else, do you think that other person would come and say, well, the auditor's really concerned about the way I do my job? Maybe not, so if a board member's there, then it's more transparent and can be told to the board, or you can bring your concerns up, like, I'm really concerned about this process or something. So I think it just brings a level of transparency.
Okay, that's,
In our district, it's. Yeah. But
Question.
I also, it's part of my goals, so. It's nice to have a board member there to review.
oh, that's part of your goal.
Yeah.
don't make it change. Don't make it change.
Rick recommends that every board member do it once, I feel like I checked that off.
I
box.
Yeah.
I checked that box off of my,
I have done
I've
that,
done it once.
I think I've done it twice.
Well,
I've been on the board for 11 years, so it's easy to do twice in 11 years.
Okay, item I, board guiding principles. Does anyone have any?
I like them.
the only thing, I remember there was a, training that we went to, it was a pre-conference. And I think it was the long talk in that pre-conference conversation, and there were board goals that were very global And like the board could pretty much cite them. They were like 3 or 4 sentences. They were very simple and very global and encompassed many things. And I remember us sitting at that, Michael, and saying, wow, could we define ours in a more simpler global type of.
Well,
So I
Yeah.
just am throwing it out there again
I think,
as,
yes, I'm trying to find. Not that, I have that, trying to find. The, no, what you have in the green,
a board self-evaluation.
self-evaluation. So, I think, are you talking, is this what you're talking about? Are you talking about these items, the
No.
standards,
No.
or, okay,
I'm talking about how we have all of these and they're pretty
yeah,
detailed,
yeah,
they're pretty granular, I think was the terminology that we used when we came back from that pre-conference.
mhm,
And there was about 3 or 4 that were very global and very, like every board member could probably
yeah,
they were much simpler and much more global. And really, if we're trying to keep this top of mind
mhm,
in each decision that we make,
mhm.
these are very granular to try. I'll just speak for my own self, to try to remember to keep top of mind while I'm looking at each policy and each thing.
But isn't the top of, I'm horrible with words, but isn't the top of mind ones, I know we have my OSBA, and it's different than our guiding principles. It's like, it's called some other word.
Well, I think these are really what we're, the lens that we're supposed to be looking through when we make decisions, right? No?
I'm thinking more vision versus.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the word
I think these communicate a set of values to the public about how. What guides our board in leading the district. But I mean, I would like to see. And I don't think we're gonna be able to do it this time, but. As I was reading through these and thinking about the board self-evaluation. Perhaps that's something that could come up through that self-evaluation process is. I just,
That's a good,
yeah, I like the
Appreciate
idea,
that.
we should question everything, we should challenge everything. Meaning, we should question, why do we do this and what purpose does it serve? And who is it serving it for, you know, I think these are really good, but I think sometimes we meaning. Boards, government entities, you know, do things. And it's kind of in a vacuum, you know, and it's not necessarily related to, so I would like to see. You know, I would like to see things. Show up in here related to, you know, more things related to student outcomes and maybe more things related to. The standards that we're evaluating ourselves on next spring, so. In fact, that was my only note, was if I were to add something to this, it would be, something about self-evaluation and self-improvement and, you know,
I like looking at this through this process. I think that's a really, I think as we move through this, so
Yeah.
I like us. Maybe
Yeah.
taking this and looking at it through this process.
And I think-
yeah,
I think that would be a good. That would be a good thing to talk to Kristen about. Hey, Kristen, what are your thoughts on like guiding principles and its relationship to these standards and effective board? You know,
we will see her in a couple of weeks.
can you make a note of that, Denise, so we don't forget to?
I'm gonna be asking her, cause I'm gonna see
Good.
her in a couple of weeks.
Oh, good,
So I'm
yeah.
gonna be, that's,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah,
will
I would
ask
love
her
to
that.
get, yeah, cause I agree with you. Things should be coherent and related and all moving in the same direction. And I think a lot of the stuff in here does that, but yeah. Could I cite all of these? No, I'd have to come and read them.
But it's
Yeah.
nice, right? We know in our strategic, we know
Right.
attendance, we know
Right.
reading by third, we know
Right.
Men's graduation, right?
Yeah.
So those are very specific touch points and we can relate those, so I'd like to see.
Well, and also, these were formed before we had a board operating agreement and a board superintendent operating agreement, which is kind of these two in a way, so. Yeah, I think we have like a lot of branches of similar things that maybe we can look at how to make it one cohesive thing, yeah. So. Okay. But no one has like a burning thing to add or take off, okay. All
I
right.
just don't like the word feel in the first.
I know you don't, I get it. I get it. I thought about that when I read the first one. Okay, safety and long range facility plan.
Oh, safety, oh, well, long range facility plan.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of discussed, I think that came out of the discussion the last time where we're gonna kind of hit those on the board agendas and then the information based on what I shared on the Culver Road report about applying in December, so.
Will that pro forma include the whole district, or is it just for Culver?
I don't know, I think we'll have to find somebody to really kind of probably ask Josh at ZCS to say, hey, can we get a performer out and that was, I was speaking just to the Culver Road.
Okay.
But
Not the whole district. The long range facility plan will just say, hey, where are you with your, all the bomb projects being done and. Amazing thing about John is he already has things on preventative maintenance, they have scheduled, they have those types of things. And then I think it'll just really say where we set up, what's our capacity, what's the anticipated growth for students? What are you gonna need to replace in certain times down the road and things of that nature? Which I'm really curious because we just put a lot of stuff in and I think we've set our district up for many, many decades, so.
I mean, the safety investment component has been a conversation, so I really would like to see if we're gonna update the long range facility plan, that we really do encompass a cohesive understanding of what we're looking at investing.
So that's one thing I don't
Safety in
know,
the
is if we can say, can we add a safety? I'm sure they do that within that grant. But if they don't, we'll call it out and just say, hey, can you do a safety assessment when you're doing these long range facility plans? So,
There's also a lot of grants for safety and upgrading.
yeah.
We just have to look into it. And there's a lot.
There's,
And
that
that
John could
government
look
has a lot
into,
of
and I
stuff
think
too.
Yeah.
it would be how pace, I mean, really, we've had, right, these piecemeal I'll call them piecemeal conversations, but in looking like at Culver and planning out the phasing, I think it would be, it would benefit the district to
Yeah.
get a cohesive understanding and plan so that we can say, yes, this is our next step. This is what we'd like to do next. This is what we'd be investing in next.
And within that grant, it'll say, hey, this is a component it includes, if you want other things. Maybe we could just say, hey, could this be an added benefit and we can, whatever the cost will be, so. That'll be really nice to have. I mean, if we can get that, I think the awards will be, if you apply for it, the awards will be in the spring and hopefully by the next spring, we'd have a solid long range facility.
How often is a long range facility plan supposed to be revisited? The last one was April 30, 2018. Was the last time there seemed to be an update.
Well, that was the update to that due to some technical fixes. That plan was done in 2000. Well, it was before the bond.
Yeah, we did the update
Yeah.
for the bond and then, I mean, we did the actual long range facility before the bond because we knew we were
Yeah.
gonna need it for the bond. And then that was just like an update fix, but like the whole nitty gritty process, cause I was in the nitty gritty process for the long range facility. and it-
2015 wasn't it?
And it was, yeah, around there,
Yeah,
Well, I came on board in 16 and was getting kind of in the final stages of the reports from Jay
yeah,
in 2016. So
Yeah.
however long it took to compile. But, you know, Michael, I mean, I don't know year wise how often they should be, but based on passing the bond and all of the different investments in the future looking forward, I think it's beneficial
timing,
to
yeah.
get it.
I think if we're talking about doing a pro forma, it just feels like, and we have the safety conversation and also, you know, part of the safety conversation is as you're making developments and changes to your facilities, the safety component, if the board has standards of safety that we want implemented when a new facility is, you know,
Nancy
built.
coming back, it's Nancy coming back.
Just came back just in time for the last item. You know, so to me, it just feels like rather than doing, I know there's the, you know, I know costs are a consideration, but. Yeah,
we can certainly, add, I mean, the more information that we have, the better we can plan for the future. of the
Well, and I
district.
guess I didn't understand that we were only talking the Culver Road one initially. I thought we really were going to be looking
Okay,
at
no, that,
a district facility,
Yeah.
long-range plan. You know, with the Culver Road component as one with safety, looking at John's maintenance that
Yeah.
he's been doing and really having a full picture.
I think the pro forma for the Culver Road, because that's what, I mean, people know that's in the UGB, we're talking about it right now, I think. Getting that first and foremost and not waiting for a year from next spring,
Right.
would be key, and then really when we do that other. And I don't even know how that would work, but we'd say, hey, long range facility plan. You know, plus, whatever.
Yeah, and there are like enrollment projections in here. You know, from 2015 that are probably not realistic.
Right.
You know.
And don't we have, when we go out for grant and there are some projects that we go out, we need the long range plan, and I mean, sometimes we don't look at it, but I think like Michael was saying, there's outdated information. And I also think it would help John figure out what grants to go for and what grants not to go for. And I think there's a lot of like federal grants and stuff that we might be missing out on that have to do with safety just because we don't have those components in there.
And we're much different district, yeah.
So,
So I would just say, you know, even though it might be at a greater cost, I think. It'll be less expensive to look at it holistically, including Culver. Than just doing Culver by itself and then having to come back and revisit the long range facility plan separately at a different time.
Well, and greater cost, is it a greater cost if you get grants to?
well,
Yeah,
and
so-
it's,
right.
I mean, it's an investment, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're looking
Yeah.
at how to best manage the resources
Yeah.
that we have. So if we
Correct.
have to invest on the front end so that we can be, good stewards of the resources that we have, then that's what we need to do.
And I don't think it's necessarily rewriting all of it, but I think it needs to be up.
Absolutely,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, there's a good framework there, but there's additional
my
information.
understanding was. 10 years,
Okay,
you know,
so.
that was my understanding.
2015.
Yeah. And it might be even more detailed, this is a CSA kind of format, so if we're looking at the state. Grant system where they're going to do the same things at every school facility,
Mm,
and by the way, they're doing a whole school facility tour on.
Right.
I don't know if they've been to our school or not, but I don't think so. But that'll take a while, there'll be a report that comes out in 2025 on that, I think, so.
mhm.
And when I was at Pace, we were doing our goals and our whatever, I don't know what it was called, goals and whatever. And that was a discussion of putting in and building, like, you know, or for insurance purposes, you know, some of our buildings are really old and also safety of the buildings and all of that kind of stuff and the whole realm of safety. And so that's something that PACE is looking at too, and I think that it would be good to kind of like make sure that we're following, and I'll help you when I get more information on that. We're just at the beginning of the talks, but I think kind of like piggybacking on that so we can get more grants and qualify for maybe PACE money and qualify for this. So we write it so that we can qualify for as much money and assistance as possible.
So we'll talk about committee assignments August 15th. You're gonna,
And Nancy's not on every one of them that you did.
Yeah. we assigned you to all.
Hey,
And and you're gonna get with your team and we'll
Yeah.
talk more about.
Yeah.
Accentuate positive
Yeah.
and recognition, things like that. Absolutely. Very good. Good job, everybody. I have to say. Doing this earlier than I thought.
I know,
Yeah.
a lot earlier. A lot earlier.
Eric,